Welcome into our inaugural episode of One-on-One with Jeff Dantzler. Our guest, of course, the famous Vance Leavy, the grand poobah of Bulldawg Illustrated. Vance, a lot of people know you're associated with Bulldawg Illustrated. You and your wife, Cherie, came up with the concept. You hired this guy from Athens, so we were the first three to jump on board. How in the world did you get the idea for this thing?
Well, interesting enough, it was hatched right around this time of year because me and some friends were down in New Orleans for the Final Four. In our 20s, we were lucky enough to go to about 9 or 10 in a row, and one of our buddies had a good international job, and he had access to good hotels, so we were in the Jayhawk Hotel, and there was something called Jayhawk Insider. I picked it up, and at the time I was, with our family newspaper down here, and we had a kind of a social product called Coastal Illustrated. So I came back, called you, said we needed some sports, and Cherie, of course, was adamant that we make sure we had social element, and we were already doing that again with the Coastal Illustrated, so we borrowed a little bit of that, and voila.
And here's 17 years strong, still going. Vance, we talk about this a lot. With Georgia football, it's so unique. Even going back to the Civil War, Georgia was called the breadbasket of the state. We're obviously the big fish in the state. Of course, you got the enemy, and you got to beat Tech. But a lot of what makes Georgia football so interesting is that other big game, oftentimes it depends on where you're from. For our friends from LaGrange and Columbus, that Auburn game is so big. If you're from Rome or Dalton, Tennessee is huge. If you're from Augusta, South Carolina, or Clemson, well, obviously I'm from Statesboro, you're from St. Simons. Growing up in Southeast Georgia, that Florida game is extra special, and especially to the people of the Golden Isles. These last 3 years, the victories under Kirby's watch over Florida, they've been so special. How have you seen those results directly affect the Golden Isles, just in terms of the spirit and energy behind the Georgia program?
Without a doubt. I mean, 5 years ago, people weren't coming down as much. They were frustrated a little bit, and to win the way Kirby has done, it immediately, much like Athens and everywhere else, what he's doing is, it's caught on, and Georgia, Florida is back, the way it was in the rip-roaring 80s when people, Georgia fans are awesome. They're going to travel no matter what. But when you feel like you got a better than good chance of winning, you come a little bit longer. You spend a little bit more money, and so far Kirby has he has put his stamp on the game being in Jacksonville as far as showing up ready to play, and of course the fans have followed suit, which they always are. So it's been big.
Vance, of Kirby's wins at Georgia, now the Rose Bowl over Oklahoma, that's an easy choice. So I'll say outside of that, what's your particular favorite Georgia victory under Kirby's watch?
Yeah, that run to the Rose Bowl and to the national title kind of all goes in its end. But, I look at last year's Auburn game. That was a crazy game where Jordan Hare was, that second half, and then the fourth, the Dogs were holding on, and you were afraid that they were going to relinquish that lead they built, but they dug in. Me personally, I take credit for the victory because I was the fool running up Section 35, and I even shook a young man's hand. I wrote about it because he was crying. He thought we were going to lose. And it, as you remember, the momentum in that game, this like that, it switched. And but to me, when Kirby looks at kind of what he's building, as we know, we were not fought. We didn't have a whole lot of our arsenal was not full at the end of that season. So to get that victory, personally, that was one of my favorite, because it showed that what a team can do. And when you get that sense of we're going to win no matter what, you're that much closer to doing what everyone in the Bulldog Nation wants.
Boy, that Sugar Bowl felt great too, didn't it? I thought that was a good message of what Kirby was able to do, some of the things that had gone wrong the year prior. And it was kind of a message of, as you just said, the team and guys who want to be there. And now that we had so many great wins last year, but that was my favorite game of the season, the Sugar Bowl win over a terrific Baylor team.
Well, and just for Jake to go out in that fashion, to me, that was what I liked the most. Because, I mean, as you know, he was our next door neighbor. We didn't mess with him much other than probably keeping him up every now and then. But, just an incredible young man, came to Georgia. He will continue to be a huge ambassador for Georgia. So for him to kind of go out and remind people what his 3 years were all about, and to pass it on to, the next set of guys, to me, that I agree, that was a special one, in particular for Jake and the seniors, and, of course, Charlie, his roommate. That was cool.
Well, Vance, a lot of people might not know this. We're going to dig into this, but your beautiful wife, Cherie, has back from y'all's days at Glynn Academy High School a nice little spirit ribbon with your picture on it. It says, "My guy." Can you describe the playing career of the fiercest 5'4", 135-pound cornerback, I believe it was, in Glynn Academy Red Terror history?
Well, if you caught the ball and I was on the other side, you can bet your ankles were going to be coming out from under you, because my little frame was like a missile. And most times people went down. But now, whether or not I should be at corner is without question. I did not have the quickness to be at corner. I would have probably done better at safety. And personally, it wasn't until I got to Athens that I was figured out on the intramural fields that I was a much better receiver with long arms and the ability to time ball like a basketball player. So, my head coach missed out on it,
You could have been Wes Welker before Wes Welker was Wes Welker.
I mean, still playing,
All right, so Vance, you come from a long line of Bulldogs in your family. What are some of your favorite stories with your dad, the Frog Pond Lounge, some of his buddies? Because there's no doubt, being around the Bulldogs, I think for all of us at a very young age, along with loving Georgia football, loving the life that goes with Georgia football, in many ways, we all grew up a bit fast.
Yes. And us boys on the coast maybe a little bit faster than most. But I guess, my dad, and you would know the year when the deluge in Jacksonville happened in the 60s.
When we killed them in '68, beat them 51-0. Yeah.
As the story goes, my dad and his partner in crime, Franklin Burns, got down there on the fence, and they sent in the 4-string quarterback, and darn if he didn't run in and shock the coaches, because by then I think the players, the starters were doing whatever they wanted on the sidelines, because the game had gotten so out of hand. Then, of course, you mentioned the Frog Pond Lounge, Leroy Dukes, and our buddy David, his son. I can remember being there in '80. Herschel had gone over the top to, maybe once or twice against Tech. He might have even done the somersault in that game. And lo and behold, after the game, my brother and sister come running up to the hotel room there at the Ramada, and they're like, Herschel's here. So we, amongst many well-served Georgia fans, post-game, wiggled our way up to Herschel, and he spotted the littlest guy in the room who had no business being there. and he picked me up and signed my autograph. So that was the 1980 season. So as you can, I was already hooked, but it doesn't get much better than that.
Yeah, not when you meet the greatest of all time, number 34. Now, amongst your close friends there, you're often called Senator Leavy. Can you give us a bit of a background on that?
Well, for whatever reason, when I'm amongst my friends in the evening, I do have some political aspirations. I was in student council at Glynn Academy. I do think if there was ever a time out there where some independent business owner type people wanted to throw their name in, you can just see what happened today. I mean, one guy made a couple hundred people fly to Washington to have a vote. So, common sense is kind of what's lacking. This whole virus thing, as you and I were talking before, a lot of it has to do with common sense. Right now, we're supposed to be staying indoor with our own families, and if you got to go into work, I mean, you put your head down, you do what you got to do, but hopefully, a lot of companies are having it where people can not have to do that, but still work for the ones that, are still working, and it's tough out there. So it's common sense, I guess, is what makes me have those aspirations maybe more past 9 or 10 o'clock at night.
Well, I think we can all agree on this. The longer kind of the shelter in place goes, that 9 months from now, you got two businesses that are going to be very busy: OBGYNs and divorce attorneys.
Without a doubt.
So Vance, let's just go ahead and assume, and I think we will. We'll be ready to go with the college football season now. This year, and obviously sports is the great release for so many people. It's something else that you can dive into. And I think for a lot of folks, as we say, on March 11th and March 12th, shit got real when games started getting not just postponed, but getting canceled. It certainly did for me and so many of us that do work in sports. But, not having a spring practice, we're going to have a new left tackle, a new kicker, a new quarterback, a new offensive coordinator. But, the deal is everybody's on the same playing field. And I think with the country going through something unprecedented as this, I think everybody's just going to be excited when we start playing again. And, you hope you have a good year. But, again, a lot of people, a lot of teams are pretty much in the same boat here.
Yeah, without a doubt. And, I'm hoping there'll be a season. Today, Herb Streep, I saw something on Twitter or something. He's skeptical. The powers that be will have to make some hard decisions. And really, it's going to come down if hopefully we can get a hold of this virus. But, yeah, like you said, once, it's kind of like the way I look at it, every team is the same. And, I would think that fan bases are not going to be as rabid. I'm hoping they're just going to, like you do a great job of telling people to cherish the moment. If we do get back to college football, which, obviously it's what the doctor would order because it means we're through this craziness. That would be what I hope is, it's not so much about being a rabid, my team winning every time, but it's like cherish that you're back doing something you love as a fan.
That's exactly right. I remember after 9/11 and Rudy Giuliani, he had a great quote that during the 2001 World Series when Jeter hit the game-winning home run there in New York City, and he said that was the first time since 9/11 that he had picked up the sports section first. So that was kind of that first sign that times had started to return to normal. And we'll get back to that. And listen, nothing brings people together like Georgia football. So in closing, for someone who lives in St. Simons and Athens, I mean, you got the life of Riley there. What are your favorite things about a Georgia home football weekend in Athens, GA?
Wow. Well, obviously, you reconnect with some folks that obviously your core friends that are right there with you, but you know, you reconnect with people that are your, you know, that like Wayne Cooper down in Sarasota. I mean, that guy's been exercising his tail off. He had a goal to be 30 pounds lighter by G-Day. I saw yesterday he's down to 33, and he put on Facebook his diet and and he didn't mention Crown Royal. So I'm thinking maybe he's able to still have a little bit of that. But you know, to me, that's the thing, is just reconnecting with all those people that mean everything, and then just seeing people on campus and putting yourself back to when you were 8 years old. For us, it was Herschel. For these guys, you know, it was Swift or Fromm, or, you know, and moving forward to the new names. You know, this next year, the slate's, you know, wide open for who's going to be our go-to guy. I mean, that's part of the, as you said, you know, that's part of the allure of a new season.
It always is exciting. Well, Vance, enjoyed it very much. Thank you for all you do. You got to do some cannonballs in the pool right now and rest up. And the games will be back here soon. So, you know, I just look forward to the day, probably 2-3 years from now, we're all going to be busy and saying, yeah, you know, all that time that we were kind of forced to be around our family and friends, you know, there was some good that came out of that.
Oh, yeah. We had a little St. Simon's Elementary teachers today went by, and, you know, each teacher was, of course, by themselves in their car, but they had a parade because they were going to see the students that they can't teach right now. And very cool. And I'll just say one last thing. With this new platform, BI Digital, you know, you're about to be interviewing hopefully more respectable scallywags than myself. And then we are also rolling out a show called Threading the Needle, where some of our guys from the website will be having topics where we hope to get some guest people to pop in. And so we're working on, you know, because right now, from a print standpoint, we're sort of watching to see where things go like everyone else. So we just wanted to stay connected to everybody out there. And we're excited about, you know, this is kind of a new opportunity and a new thing to have, as you said, have fun with right now. There's not too many rules out there. So, and you got a captive audience.
Well, and remember this, when the camera's shooting from the waist up, nobody has any idea if we're wearing pants or not. Thank you to Bob Miller, our producer, for his great work. He and Greg Poole, those guys do a fantastic job. Vance, enjoy your weekend, and thanks for being the victim. And I'm glad you could come up with some of your great high school football memories, because as Cherie always said, you were her guy.
Take care up there in Athens. We'll hold down the fort on the coast.
Beautiful. See you next week with a little one-on-one right here with yours truly.